The first time Willow Tarn threatened to foreclose on my house, I was elbow-deep in a busted sink trap under my kitchen counter. I remember laughing. Actually, laughing because it sounded so absurd. "You think this is a joke? York?" she screeched from my porch voice, cutting through the screen door like a siren. "You signed the HOA agreement. You owe $12,000 for the clubhouse renovation." 12 grand for what? A wine bar and yoga deck she'd cooked up for her little book club. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked her dead in the eye. "Willow, I'm not paying for your vanity project." Her sunglasses flashed like armor. "It's for the community," she said. "The community didn't vote on it," I fired back. That's when she stepped closer, heels clicking tone, dropping to a hiss. "If you don't pay, we'll take your house." I laughed again, but this time it didn't feel funny. I'd moved into Brookpine Estates 3 years earlier. Nice lawns, quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of place where people waved even if they didn't know you. Back then, the HOA was harmless retirees arguing over mailbox colors. I joined the board just to keep things fair. Then, Willow got elected president and everything went downhill. She was one of those people who made leadership sound like a threat. First came the $600 rose garden conveniently next to her property. Then, private security patrols that only circled her street. When she announced the clubhouse renovation complete with marble floors and a hot tub, the price tag jumped to $200,000. Nobody I knew had voted for it. I started asking questions, meeting minutes, bids, budgets, but Willow refused to show anything. When I stopped paying, the letters began unsigned warnings, then fines, then an actual foreclosure notice delivered by hand with a smile that made my skin crawl. At first, I tried to shrug it off. I told myself she couldn't possibly do anything serious, but then the fines stacked up and I realized maybe she could. Maybe this ridiculous HOA really could take my home if I didn't fight back. So I stopped laughing. I started preparing. I installed cameras every angle covered. I saved every letter, voicemail, email. I recorded board meetings. And one Tuesday morning, I drove to the county clerk's office and filed a public records request for every HOA document related to the renovation. 2 days later, I was sitting at my dining table surrounded by papers and cold coffee. The deeper I read, the more my stomach turned. Every single contract went to a company called Keystone Concepts. No competitive bids, no references, just huge checks for services rendered. I looked up the business, it barely existed. The website was a single page with a stock photo of a man in a hard hat. The phone number went straight to voicemail. Then I saw it. The company owner, Curtis Tarn. Same last name as Willow. I froze. I ran the property records and there it was, Curtis owned the vacant house right behind hers. The one with the light that clicked on at dusk but never showed any life inside. It wasn't a renovation company at all. It was a shell. She was funneling HOA money to her own relative. My heart was pounding. I wasn't just angry anymore. I felt sick. I needed help. So I walked down to Marlene's house, the lady who ran a small paralegal business out of her garage. Everyone called her the neighborhood historian. When I told her what I'd found, she didn't even look surprised. "If you're here to talk about Willow, get in line," she said. But when I dropped the file on her table, her face changed. "You're kidding me," she whispered. "This explains why the clubhouse still smells like mildew." She told the board it was unsafe to enter. "She's bluffing," I said. "Nothing's going on in there." We decided to take it to the police. The officer who took our statement, Riley, looked bored until Marlene pulled out the bank records. Over $180,000 in HOA checks made out to Keystone Concepts, all signed by Willow herself. That got his attention. By the time we left the station, word was already spreading. People started calling Marlene furious. Some had paid their share months ago. None had seen a single improvement. The next morning, I woke to the sound of clanking metal. A tow truck was in my driveway hooking up my pickup. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled. The driver looked at me confused. "Work order from the HOA. This vehicle's abandoned." I pointed to my keys, still on the counter. "I drove it yesterday. I pulled up footage from my security camera, me unloading tools the night before." The guy looked uncomfortable. "If you've got proof, I'll cancel the pickup." I nodded. "Good idea. And tell Willow I said hi. An hour later, a certified letter arrived. Foreclosure filing. She'd actually done it. Claimed I owed $13,000 in unpaid fees. Handwritten spreadsheet, fake totals the works. That was the moment I hit my lowest point. Sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the letter, wondering if maybe I was the one pushing too far. Maybe it would be easier to just pay and make it go away. Maybe I'd misread things. But then I looked at the photos taped to my wall. My dad and I, building that fence my first day in this house, the neighbors who'd trusted me to speak up. And I realized, no, I wasn't the problem. She was. And if I quit now, she'd bury the truth for everyone. So I made a call to Trent, my old lawyer from a zoning case years back. He read through the documents, eyebrows rising higher with every page. "York," he said finally, "she filed fake financials in court. That's fraud. This isn't civil anymore, it's criminal." The next morning, 2 detectives showed up at Willow's house. They didn't knock. They went in with a warrant. 10 minutes later, she walked out in a robe and slippers, yelling about her rights as they guided her into the back of a cruiser. She saw me across the street. For a moment, I swear she looked more confused than scared, like she couldn't comprehend that the rules didn't bend for her anymore. By the end of that week, the rest of the HOA board had resigned. One of them confessed that Willow promised community perks in exchange for silence, free landscaping, waived dues, VIP pool passes for their grandkids. Marlene stepped in as acting president. Her first act, freeze the HOA's bank account. Her second call, an emergency meeting. The clubhouse still smelled like mold and broken promises, but it was packed wall to wall. No more secret votes, she said. No more backroom deals. From now on, every decision is public. People clapped, some even cheered. It felt like the nightmare was ending, but it wasn't over yet. The auditors Marlene hired uncovered another $30,000 in maintenance consulting. 2 checks went to a man named A. Camden Lockatch, Willow's nephew. That's when Detective Lynn from Financial Crimes got involved. She was calm, sharp, terrifying in that quiet way. If these transfers crossed state lines, she said it's federal. And then the feds came. One morning, 2 unmarked cars rolled up outside the clubhouse. Agents walked in with a locksmith and came out with boxes, files, hard drives, even a desktop computer wrapped in plastic. By noon, the local news vans were parked around the cul-de-sac. Brookpine Estates wasn't a neighborhood anymore. It was a crime scene. That evening, I got a knock on my side door. An older man stood there, tall, weathered, wearing a faded denim jacket. "You're York, right? Name's Boyd. Used to be HOA president here a long time ago." He sat down in my garage and told me everything. Willow's father had run the HOA decades ago and got booted for the same kind of scam. He handed me old transcripts yellowed with age. One line stood out: a vote passed years ago limiting HOA power over personal property. It had never been added to the bylaws. Willow had buried it. I took a photo and sent it to Marlene. Her reply came fast. "This changes everything." At the next meeting, the community packed the room again. Marlene held up the old document and spoke into a borrowed microphone. "We're voting tonight," she said. "Not on a garden or a fountain, but on whether the HOA should exist at all." Lawyer Trent stood beside her. "Your bylaws allow dissolution," he explained. "You just need 60%. When the votes were counted, it wasn't close, 74% in favor. The HOA was dead." Over the next few months, Brookpine transformed. A resident council replaced the board, transparent limited power, rotating terms. Boyd came back as a historical advisor. Marlene stayed on as chair until the first election. Every dollar of HOA money was audited. Refunds issued where possible. Willow's trial came last. The courtroom was packed, neighbors, reporters, even former board members. The prosecution played a recording I'd taken months ago, Willow's voice dripping with arrogance. "They'll never know the difference. We'll just call it beautification." It took the jury less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, falsifying documents, embezzlement, conspiracy. 12 years, no parole before 7. Her partners got 5 each. The developer she'd funneled money to got 8 and lost his license for life. When the verdict was read, Willow didn't say a word. She just stared straight ahead, jaw locked, like the world had betrayed her. Maybe she finally understood she wasn't untouchable. I watched her being led away in cuffs and felt not joy, not even relief, just quiet. The kind that comes when a storm finally breaks. We didn't throw a party. We didn't rebuild the clubhouse. We stripped it down, ripped up the fake marble floors, sold off the hot tub, turned the space into a community library. The air smelled of sawdust and paint again. Real work, honest work. For months, people still talked about Willow, about the fraud, the trial. But eventually, it faded. The neighborhood started talking about other things, kids' weather, birthdays, life. And me. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun hit the street. I nearly lost the house she tried to take. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was defending a property. I was protecting something bigger, truth maybe. Or just the idea that power only works if we let it. Because that's the thing about people like Willow Tarn. They thrive in silence, in apathy, in neighbors too scared or too polite to say no. But once you start shining a light, once people start talking, there's nowhere left for them to hide. And that's how you kill a monster like that. Not with anger, but with daylight.